I had spent weeks planning the perfect surprise birthday party for Daniel. Every detail mattered to me, from the handcrafted invitations I secretly mailed out to his closest friends and family, to the soft blue and silver color scheme I knew he loved. I even ordered his favorite carrot cake from that little bakery across town he always raved about. It was not just a birthday party. It was my way of showing him just how much he meant to me. I wanted him to walk through those doors, see the people who loved him gathered together, and feel overwhelmed with joy. I wanted him to feel seen, celebrated, cherished. I imagined the look on his face when everyone yelled, "Surprise!" I pictured him turning to me with that wide smile of his, pulling me close and whispering that he had never felt more loved. That image had played in my mind over and over like a beautiful dream. I poured so much of myself into this party because I believed it would bring us closer. I believed it would remind him how deep my love ran. Daniel and I had been together for almost 4 years. We met at a friend's housewarming party, and from the first moment, there was a spark. He had a quiet charm, a kindness in his eyes that made me feel safe. He was the one who remembered to bring me soup when I was sick, the one who stayed up late helping me study for exams during my last semester of grad school. He made me feel like I could lean on someone for the first time in my life. Our relationship had its ups and downs, like any other, but we always found our way back to each other. We had talked about marriage, kids, a house with a garden. I believed we were slowly building a future together, one brick at a time. Lately, though, something had shifted. At first, I thought it was just stress. His job had become more demanding, and he had mentioned being under pressure. He started coming home later, claiming meetings ran long. He would retreat to the bedroom with his laptop, saying he needed to finish up work. The warmth in his voice had begun to fade. Conversations that once flowed with ease now felt clipped and distant. When I asked if something was wrong, he would shake his head and smile, but the smile never quite reached his eyes. I remember one night in particular. We were sitting on the couch, and I leaned over to show him a funny video on my phone. As he laughed, his own phone buzzed. I saw the name flash across the screen, Lena. He quickly turned the screen face down and muttered something about work. I nodded, pretending I had not noticed, but a small knot tightened in my chest. I asked who she was, and he casually said she was a new team member. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. After all, I was the one planning a party to celebrate his life, his joy. I could not let doubt cloud that. There were other small moments, too. Moments that seemed harmless on the surface but left a strange aftertaste. He began locking his phone, which he had never done before. He stopped calling me Love, the little nickname he always used. And sometimes, when he thought I was not looking, his expression would shift into something unreadable, cold, distracted, elsewhere. I would ask him about our weekend plans, and he would say, "We will see," with a shrug that made me feel like I was no longer part of his world. But I told myself it was just a phase. Every couple goes through rough patches. That was what I repeated to myself as I stayed up late crafting tiny name cards for the dinner table, or when I arranged for his parents to fly in from out of state as a special surprise. I believed that once he saw the effort I had put in, once he saw how deeply I loved him, something would shift back. He would remember who we were. He would hold me like he used to, with both arms wrapped tight as if letting go would be unthinkable. I ignored the whispers of doubt in the back of my mind because the dream I was chasing felt too important. I believed that love, true, wholehearted love, could fix anything. Even distance. Even silence. Even secrets. And so, with my heart full of hope, I continued planning the party that was meant to remind him of everything we once were. Planning the party turned into a full-time project. Every free moment I had was spent organizing, coordinating, and double-checking details. I created a shared document under a fake name so Daniel would not accidentally come across any files on my laptop. I called his mother under the pretense of asking for a family recipe, but in truth, I was inviting her and his father to fly in from Chicago. They had not seen him in over a year, and I knew how much he missed them. When she heard what I was doing, her voice caught with emotion. She told me he was lucky to have someone who loved him like I did. I reached out to his childhood best friend Marcus, who now lived 2 states away. Getting him to agree to come was not easy. His job kept him traveling, but once I told him how much this would mean, he promised he would make it. I spent evenings designing a photo wall filled with memories from Daniel's life, baby pictures, graduation shots, goofy snapshots of the two of us from vacations and quiet Sundays at home. I rented a small private room at his favorite restaurant, the one where we had celebrated our 2nd anniversary. The manager was kind enough to let me bring my own decorations and even helped arrange a menu tailored to Daniel's tastes. Despite the secrecy and stress, I felt joyful. Every little task, every call or text I sent out, felt like an act of love. I pictured his face over and over again, his eyes lighting up, the disbelief followed by happiness, the way his voice would crack a little when he realized what I had done. I wanted to capture that moment, freeze it in time. I kept imagining the moment he would walk in and everyone would shout, "Surprise!" The way he would turn toward me with a smile so wide it would erase the distance that had been growing between us. This party would bring us back to center. That was the story I kept telling myself. But as the party approached, Daniel's behavior became more difficult to explain away. He seemed distracted and irritable. One evening, I asked if he had any special plans for his birthday. He barely looked up from his phone and muttered something about not really caring this year. I laughed gently and said that maybe we could go out, just the two of us. He nodded without enthusiasm, his fingers still moving on his screen. When I tried to peek playfully to see what he was doing, he tilted the screen away and turned it off. I asked who he was texting, and he shrugged. Just work. He used to kiss my forehead before he left for work each morning. That stopped sometime in the last 2 weeks. He would grab his keys, offer a rushed goodbye, and be out the door before I had finished making coffee. When I brought it up, he said he was just overwhelmed with deadlines. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. I reminded myself that stress can make people behave in strange ways, that he was not pulling away because of me. I told myself that once the pressure passed, he would come back. Still, little things continued to pile up. He took longer in the shower and brought his phone with him. He changed his phone passcode, claiming that IT at work made him do it. He stayed out late a few nights without much explanation. When I asked where he had been, he said he had gone for a drink with a colleague, someone whose name I had never heard before. One night, while I was sitting at the dining table finalizing the guest list, he came in and grabbed a bottle of water. I heard him whispering on the phone in the hallway. His tone was low and urgent. I could not make out the words, but something about it made me stop typing. I walked softly to the edge of the hallway, just close enough to hear, but the moment I did, the whispering stopped. He stepped into the room with a blank expression. I asked who he was talking to, and he said it was Marcus. He claimed they were trying to coordinate a weekend visit. I smiled and nodded, hiding the chill that ran through me. Marcus was already coming to the party. He had confirmed just that morning. I considered confronting him, but I stopped myself. What if I was overthinking everything? What if I ruined the surprise just because I let fear creep in? The last thing I wanted was to turn this gesture of love into an argument. So I kept quiet. I reminded myself that love meant trust. That relationships had ups and downs. That this was just one of those rough patches we would laugh about later. As the party date drew closer, I became consumed with the logistics. I picked up the cake and carefully drove it home, checking the box every few minutes to make sure it had not shifted. I strung together the photo garland with tiny clothespins and string, stopping occasionally to smile at the memories. I double-checked every RSVP, ordered extra candles just in case, and confirmed that the guests knew to arrive 30 minutes early to set the scene. Despite everything, I still believed this party would be the turning point. I still imagined him walking into that room, seeing everyone there, realizing how much effort had gone into making him feel loved. I pictured him pulling me aside, thanking me, maybe even crying. I thought about how we would go home that night and laugh about all my secretive behavior. He would tell me he had no idea. He would say it was the best birthday of his life. I held onto that image tightly, like a life raft. I told myself that this was the storm before the calm. That love required patience. That everything I was doing would be worth it. I believed, with all my heart, that everything would be perfect. The room shimmered with soft, golden lights. Strings of warm bulbs hung from the ceiling in gentle curves, casting a cozy glow across the space. The walls were dressed with the photo garlands I had labored over, each picture carefully chosen to tell the story of Daniel's life. Balloons in deep navy and silver floated above tables set with elegant centerpieces, simple arrangements of white roses, his favorite. The scent of vanilla and fresh greenery mingled with the savory aroma from the buffet, which featured all of his favorite dishes, from roasted herb chicken to garlic mashed potatoes and a decadent chocolate mousse. Laughter echoed around me as guests began to arrive, their coats whisked away by the waitstaff. Old friends hugged each other warmly, some reuniting after years apart. Daniel's parents were glowing with excitement. His mother clutched my hands and said she had barely slept the night before, she was so eager to see his face. Marcus arrived just after them, shaking his head in disbelief at how much effort had gone into every detail. He pulled me into a hug and whispered that Daniel would be speechless. I smiled, my heart pounding, and checked my phone again for the time. Daniel was expected to arrive in 15 minutes. I texted his colleague Alex, who had agreed to help me get him there under the pretense of a casual dinner meeting. Alex responded quickly, letting me know they were 5 minutes away. The guests quieted down as I gave a subtle signal. The lights dimmed slightly. Everyone ducked behind tables and chairs, crouching in anticipation. The energy in the room shifted, a mix of excitement and nerves. The door opened, and Daniel stepped inside. The room erupted in one joyous, thunderous shout. Surprise! Confetti poppers burst, laughter filled the air, and someone hit play on a playlist filled with his favorite songs. But Daniel did not smile. He did not laugh or shout in return. Instead, he froze. His eyes scanned the room, wide and disoriented. For a brief moment, he looked as though he could not breathe. He took a step back, his mouth slightly open, and then forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. He nodded awkwardly and gave a wave, but his whole body radiated discomfort. I rushed to him, throwing my arms around his neck. He hugged me back, but it was hesitant, stiff. I whispered in his ear, "Happy birthday. I love you." He kissed the side of my head and said thank you, but his voice sounded strained, almost hollow. I tried not to let it sink in. I told myself he was simply overwhelmed, caught off guard. I had hoped for surprise. Maybe I had gotten more than I expected. People began approaching him, hugging him, clapping him on the back. He smiled politely, shaking hands and nodding through conversations. But something was off. He kept glancing toward the entrance, as if he was expecting someone, or dreading that someone might appear. I stayed close, touching his hand, trying to draw him back to the moment. Every time our eyes met, he looked away. Then the door opened again. A woman entered. She was striking, tall, with sharp features, long dark hair cascading over her shoulders, and wearing a crimson dress that clung to her like a secret. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, then landed on Daniel. She smiled. He froze. The murmur in the room dulled to a hush as guests turned to see who she was. She walked with purpose, heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. I stepped aside instinctively, watching her move toward him like a scene unfolding in slow motion. When she reached him, she did not hesitate. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him, not on the cheek, not lightly, but deeply, fully, like someone who had kissed him many times before. My breath caught. I felt everything inside me lurch, like the floor had shifted and left me standing on nothing. Guests around us gasped softly, some looking at me with confusion, others quickly averting their eyes. Daniel pulled back. His face had turned pale, his mouth opening and closing, searching for words. The woman turned to look at me. Her expression was calm, almost amused. She tilted her head and asked, "So you must be the one who threw this lovely party." I blinked. I could not speak. My hands were trembling. Daniel stepped between us, holding his hands up as though to stop whatever was about to happen. He said my name, softly, as if I might break. I took a step back. Around us, the room buzzed with confusion. Marcus stared, stunned. His parents stood frozen near the bar. The music had cut off halfway through a song, leaving only the low murmurs and the sharp crackle of tension. I tried to steady myself. I said, "Who is she?" My voice came out quieter than I intended. The woman laughed lightly. "I am his girlfriend," she said, "but maybe you already figured that out." The world tilted. I looked at Daniel. His face had gone blank, as if shutting down. "No," I said, shaking my head. "That is not possible. I am his girlfriend. I have been with him for 3 years. I threw this party for him. His family is here. His friends. What is going on?" The woman did not flinch. "We have been together for 2 years," she said. "He said he was going to tell you soon." Gasps filled the space like a wave. People whispered, some stepping back, some walking away. Marcus looked furious, his fists clenched at his sides. His mother had covered her mouth with her hand. Daniel finally spoke. "I can explain," he said, but the words sounded pathetic, meaningless. I shook my head. "No, not now, not here." I wanted to run, to scream, to disappear. But I looked around and saw faces I loved, faces I had invited into this space of celebration. I had built this night with every ounce of my heart, and I would not let it collapse completely. Not yet. I turned to the guests and tried to smile. "Please, enjoy the food. There is music, drinks. You all came to celebrate, and I am grateful for that." They did not move at first, but eventually, people started drifting toward the tables again, quietly, awkwardly. Some kept glancing at Daniel. Some looked at me with pity. Others avoided eye contact altogether. I stood there, surrounded by decorations I had crafted with love, next to a man I no longer recognized, and a woman who had shattered the story I thought I was living. And still, I tried to hold it all together. The tension in the room thickened like smoke. I could feel the weight of every eye turning toward us, every breath held in disbelief. I stood rooted to the floor, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the low murmurs of confusion. My hands, once steady with excitement, now trembled as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. The woman beside Daniel, this stranger in red with a calm, sharp voice, looked entirely unfazed by the chaos unfolding around her. She did not look confused or embarrassed. She looked deliberate. She turned her body fully toward him, arms crossed, one brow raised. Her voice was no longer soft. It was sharp, cutting, meant for everyone to hear. "I told you this would happen," she said. "I warned you that lying to 2 women would catch up with you." Gasps echoed like little bursts of thunder across the crowd. I could hear someone whisper, "2 women." Others began murmuring, trying to piece together the situation, drawing their own conclusions. Daniel stepped forward, his hands raised in a weak gesture of control. "Can we please talk about this in private?" His voice cracked. His face was pale and drenched in sweat. He looked nothing like the man I had loved for years. The woman ignored his plea and turned to me. "You really did not know, did you?" she asked. Her eyes searched mine, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw something like sympathy. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "I have been with him for 2 years, she said, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "We live together. We are engaged. He proposed to me 6 months ago." The room fell into stunned silence. My breath caught in my throat. My knees wobbled beneath me, and I grabbed the edge of the table beside me to stay upright. My vision blurred for a moment as her words echoed in my ears. Engaged. Lives with him. 2 years. Someone let out a sharp gasp. I think it was Marcus. His voice rang out next, full of disbelief. "Daniel, is this true?" Daniel ran his fingers through his hair, his body trembling. "It is complicated," he mumbled. "I never meant for any of this to happen." Complicated. The word rang out like a slap. I felt something inside me crack, something I had been desperately trying to hold together since the moment he walked through the door. I stepped forward, my voice trembling. "Complicated," I said. "You lied to me for 3 years. I thought I knew you. I thought I was planning a future with you. And you were engaged to someone else." He turned to me, eyes pleading. "I never stopped loving you," he said. I got in too deep. I did not know how to end it without hurting someone." The woman beside him scoffed. "So you thought lying to both of us would protect our feelings?" She shook her head. "Do not make this about your cowardice pretending to be kindness." People around us began to shift uncomfortably. A few guests left quietly. Others stood frozen, caught between the wreckage of truth and the discomfort of witnessing something so personal unravel in such a public space. I could feel the walls closing in. Everything around me, the decorations, the food, the photos on the wall, all reminders of the love I thought I had. I had poured myself into every detail of this night. I had believed that this party would bring us closer, that it would prove my love and commitment. Instead, it had become the stage for my humiliation. I could not look at him anymore. Every time I did, I saw a stranger. A man I had cooked for, laughed with, slept beside. A man who had looked me in the eyes and told me he loved me, all while carrying another life with someone else. I backed away slowly, bumping into one of the tables. My fingers curled around the edge, grounding me. A hand touched my shoulder gently. I turned to see Marcus, his eyes full of worry. "Come with me," he said softly. "Let us get you out of here." I nodded, unable to speak. My legs moved on their own as he led me toward the kitchen at the back of the venue. As we stepped away, I could still hear Daniel trying to explain himself to the other woman, his words a desperate mess of apologies and justifications. But I blocked it out. I needed space. I needed air. Inside the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerators and the clatter of dishes being washed by unaware staff offered a strange comfort. It was the sound of normalcy, of a world that had not just collapsed. I leaned against the counter, pressing my palms into the cold surface, trying to steady my breathing. Marcus stood beside me, silent for a moment. Then he said, "I had no idea. I promise you, I never suspected. He fooled all of us." I looked at him, tears beginning to spill down my cheeks. How could he do this? How could someone be so cruel and calculated? Marcus shook his head. "I do not know. But you did nothing wrong. You loved him. You believed in him. That is not a mistake." His words were kind, but they did not dull the pain that twisted in my chest. I felt like I was breaking into pieces. The betrayal was not just in the act itself, it was in every moment that led up to it. Every kiss, every promise, every time I had told myself that we were happy, that the little signs of distance were just temporary. "I feel like such a fool," I whispered. Marcus stepped closer, placing a hand on my arm. "You are not a fool. He is. He had something beautiful, and he destroyed it." I wiped my face with trembling fingers. "I thought tonight would be special. I thought it would bring us closer." "It did show you the truth," he said quietly. "Not the way you wanted, but now you know. And you deserve better. So much better." His words settled over me like a fragile net, not enough to hold all the broken pieces together, but enough to keep me from falling apart entirely. I took a deep breath, still shaky, and looked toward the door. The party was still going on, the music had resumed, and people were eating and talking, though the energy was muted. But for me, the celebration was over. The night that was meant to be filled with joy had become a turning point I could never have seen coming. And somewhere deep inside me, beneath the shock and sorrow, a quiet clarity began to form. I had been betrayed. I had been hurt. But I would not let this moment define me. Not forever. The guests left in waves, some slowly, others quickly, each carrying their own stunned expressions and awkward apologies. The decorations that once symbolized joy now hung like remnants of a celebration that had turned sour. Balloons sagged, half-eaten cake sat untouched, and the music had long stopped playing. The room felt hollow, echoing with what had just happened. A few friends stayed behind, unsure of whether to help clean or to simply be present. I barely registered them. My mind was still spinning, my body moving like it was underwater. I sat at one of the tables, my fingers clenched around a glass of water someone had placed in front of me. Marcus hovered nearby, his expression full of concern, but giving me space. My eyes kept darting toward the hallway, where Daniel had disappeared after the confrontation. He had slinked away with his head down, too cowardly to face the damage he had caused. Eventually, I stood up. My legs felt heavy, as if they belonged to someone else. I walked toward the hallway, every step filled with dread and fury. I found him in the side room where we had planned to store the extra food and drinks. He was sitting on a chair, hunched over, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. He looked up when he saw me. "I was going to tell you," he said immediately. "I swear, I was going to end things with her." His words hit me like a slap. I stared at him, stunned by how easily the lies rolled off his tongue. "You were going to tell me?" I said, my voice low and shaking. "You had years. You had chances every single day. But instead, you let me plan a party, invite people, pour everything I had into tonight, all while you were living a lie." He stood up, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away before he could touch me. "I did not mean to hurt you," he said. "I was trapped." She threatened to leave me if I told her the truth. "I never stopped loving you." I laughed. It was a bitter, humorless sound that tasted like ashes. "You never stopped loving me?" I repeated. "You lied to me. Every single day. You let me believe we had a future. You let me sleep beside you, share my life with you, while you were building a separate life with someone else." He tried to speak again, but I held up my hand. "Do not," I said. "Do not make this about your confusion or your fear. You knew what you were doing. You just did not think you would get caught." There was a flicker of anger in his eyes, as if my refusal to sympathize with him had offended him. "You do not understand how hard it was for me." I stepped back. "I do not want to understand," I said. "Because right now all I can think about is how blind I was. How I ignored every red flag because I loved you. Because I trusted you." The memories began to flood in, uninvited and painful. The late nights he would not explain. The way he guarded his phone. The sudden coldness that would pass like a storm, only to be followed by sweet words and warm embraces. I had explained it away. I had convinced myself that every relationship had its rough patches. That love was about pushing through the doubt. I had believed him because I wanted to. But standing there, in the wreckage of my own devotion, I saw it all for what it truly was. A carefully constructed lie. He tried again. "Can we just go home and talk about this properly?" I shook my head. We are not going home. You are not coming back with me. His face twisted with frustration. So that is it. You are just going to throw it all away. You threw it away, I said quietly. When you chose to live a double life. When you chose lies over honesty. I gave you everything. And now I am taking myself back. I walked out of the room, my heart pounding. Marcus was waiting in the hallway. He did not ask what happened. He could see it on my face. Together, we returned to the main room, where a few close friends had started gathering my things. One of them handed me my coat and hugged me gently. We are here for you, she whispered. I nodded, holding back tears. Thank you. That night, I went home alone. The silence of my apartment wrapped around me, unfamiliar and eerie. I stood in the doorway for a long time, just looking at the life we had built together. Photos on the walls. His shoes by the door. The throw blanket we both used on cold nights. Everything felt like it belonged to a dream that had suddenly ended. I moved slowly through the apartment, pulling out boxes and bags. I began to pack his things. Every shirt, every book, every little item that reminded me of him went into those boxes. I moved like I was possessed, driven by a need to reclaim my space. My sanctuary. My peace. Tears came and went. Sometimes I would pause, holding a photo, remembering a moment when I had truly believed we were happy. Other times I would feel nothing at all, like I was watching someone else live this nightmare. When everything of his was packed, I left the boxes by the door. I sent him a message, the last one I would ever send. It read, "Your things are here. Pick them up tomorrow. I will not be here." Then I blocked his number, blocked his social media, removed his photos. I needed air. I needed distance. I needed to breathe again without feeling like I was drowning in betrayal. I called Sarah, one of my closest friends. When she answered, I could not even speak at first. I just cried. She stayed on the phone with me for over an hour, saying soft things, helping me sort through the flood of emotion that had finally broken through. Later that week, I would reach out to a therapist. I knew this pain ran deep, and I did not want it to fester in silence. Lying in bed that night, I stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of who I had become. I was not the woman who threw the party anymore. I was someone else now. Someone who had seen the truth, who had stood face to face with betrayal, and chosen not to crumble. I was heartbroken. I was raw. But I was still standing. And that had to mean something. It had been 3 months since that night. 3 months since the party that turned into a disaster, since the mask fell away and I saw him for who he truly was. In those early days, the pain had been unbearable, like a constant ache that followed me from morning to night. But slowly, piece by piece, I had begun to gather myself again. The apartment looked different now. Not because I had moved the furniture or painted the walls, but because the energy had shifted. There was a new kind of peace in the air, one that came not from the presence of another person, but from the absence of lies. I had lit candles in the evenings, played my favorite music without thinking of whether he liked it, cooked meals for myself without worrying about anyone else's preferences. There was freedom in that. Freedom I had not even realized I had lost. The first few weeks had been full of grief. I cried more than I thought I would. Sometimes it was from anger, sometimes from sadness, and sometimes because I just did not know what else to feel. But I let it all out. I did not hide from the pain anymore. I let myself sit with it, feel it, and understand it. Therapy helped. My friends helped. Long walks by the river helped. I had begun journaling again, writing down everything I was too afraid to say out loud. There were nights when I replayed moments from our relationship, trying to understand how I had missed the truth for so long. I would think about the way he used to hold me, the way he spoke to me in soft tones, the promises he made under dim lighting and gentle music. It all felt like a carefully rehearsed script now, something he performed rather than lived. And yet, I did not hate him. I had spent enough time feeling broken. I did not want to carry bitterness with me too. What hurt the most was not the betrayal itself, but how much of myself I had given away in the name of love. I had poured so much into us that I forgot to pour anything into me. But that was changing now. I had started doing things alone again. I went to the movies by myself, took a painting class even though I had no experience, and booked a weekend trip to the mountains with just a backpack and a pair of hiking boots. Being alone did not mean being lonely. It meant being free. I found joy in the smallest moments. Waking up on a Sunday without expectations. Reading a book on the balcony while the wind moved through the leaves. Laughing with friends and realizing I was not pretending. I was really laughing. There was still pain, tucked away in quiet corners, but it did not control me anymore. It reminded me of what I had survived. The betrayal had changed me, yes, but not in the way I feared. It had made me sharper, stronger. I had learned to listen to the voice inside me that had always known something was wrong. I had learned that love should not come at the cost of your intuition, your peace, or your self-worth. I had learned that when someone shows you who they are, you must believe them. The party that I had spent so much time planning, the night I thought would be filled with joy, had turned into something else entirely. It was no longer a celebration of him. It was a wake-up call for me. That night had stripped away every illusion I held, every false hope I clung to. And in the aftermath, I found myself. Sometimes I wondered what he thought now. If he ever regretted losing me. If he ever sat in silence and felt the emptiness that came from knowing he had destroyed something real. But those thoughts did not stay long. They drifted away like leaves on water. Because the truth was, his regret did not matter. My healing did. I did not need closure from him. I had given that to myself. I had written my own ending to a story that had nearly broken me, and in doing so, I had begun a new one. As I stood by the window one evening, watching the sun dip below the rooftops, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had finally made space for myself to grow. I had faced the storm, stood in the middle of it, and come out the other side with my heart still beating. This journey was not one I would have chosen, but it was one I needed. And though it began with betrayal, it ended with truth. My truth. I was no longer the woman who planned surprise parties and silenced her doubts. I was someone new. Someone honest. Someone whole. And as I breathed in the fading light of that day, I knew the best chapters of my life were still ahead.